The Virgin Islands carry out assessments in the wake of Hurricane Dorian, and in sport, a task force set up to improve football in Trinidad and Tobago is disbanded. I'm Dawn Paris, and this is Caribbean in 10 for Thursday, August 29th. I'll be back with the details after the break.
We have to think a moment and allow ourselves to come back to normalcy or come back to our senses, because oftentimes, in this natural content of the flesh, we're drawn to do things of the flesh that are not God's way.
We'd like to say, for instance, if someone is taken away from us before their time, and you're sitting there, you're praying and praying, and when God don't answer you and save that person's life.
Our guests today who are joining us to talk about this new phenomenon. It is a phenomenon. Yeah. It's all over the world. It's not just in Las Vegas where we are today. So Matt Terrell, welcome to the show. You're the studio manager at Orange Theory. And Scott Kramer, you're the fitness coach. How did you guys learn about Orange Theory?
I learned about Orange Theory about 5.5 years ago, but one of my personal trainers was asking me to help him to help people in pre-sales.
Assessments in the aftermath of Dorian are underway in the Virgin Islands, where the hurricane passed yesterday evening, bringing with it heavy rains and winds. A curfew that had been imposed from 2 p.m. yesterday in the British Virgin Islands expired this morning at 6, and most government offices opened by 10. However, the Central Administration Complex remained closed after an initial assessment by authorities. No word was given on exactly how Dorian impacted the facility, but the complex had been in line for repairs prior to the hurricane's passage. Premier Andrew Foy reported that there were no lives lost or serious injuries, major property damage, crimes or problems in relation to businesses being compromised. But he said there was some major flooding on the outskirts of Road Town, with some damage to buildings reported and debris on some roads in those areas. The Premier said the work government did over the past few weeks to clean and clear major watercourses of debris would have helped reduce the impact of the heavy rains on vulnerable areas. The U.S. Virgin Islands was also impacted by Dorian's heavy rains, which caused flooding in parts of the territory. A curfew was lifted for residents of the St. Thomas St. John district at 8 a.m. after road crews had cleared debris. Dorian is still a Category 1 hurricane with winds near 85 miles per hour, but it's forecast to become a major hurricane on Friday and remain an extremely dangerous one through the weekend. At 11 a.m., it was located about 220 miles north-northwest of San Juan, Puerto Rico, and about 370 miles east of the southeastern Bahamas, and it was moving in a northwesterly direction at 13 miles per hour. On that track, Dorian is expected to move over the Atlantic well east of the southeastern and central Bahamas today and tomorrow, approach the northwestern Bahamas Saturday, and move near or over portions of the northwest Bahamas on Sunday. While no watches or warnings are in effect, interests in the northwestern and central Bahamas have been advised to monitor Hurricane Dorian's progress. The two major political parties in Guyana are reacting to the Elections Commission's decision to conclude house-to-house registration almost 2 months ahead of schedule. A Partnership for National Unity, the APNU, says it will respect the ruling, but the opposition People's Progressive Party Civic has some concerns. We get more in this HGP News report.
The decision of the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission, GCOM, Justice Claudette Singh, to put an end to the house-to-house registration on Saturday, the Partnership for National Unity, APNU, has noted that its position on the conclusion of the house-to-house registration is that it will abide by the laws and fully supports GCOM and this decision. The grouping of parties which make up APNU has made it clear that they are ready for the elections. The house-to-house registration should have run until October 20, but that will no longer take place. According to GCOM, based on the ruling of the Chief Justice on August 14, 2019, that house-to-house registration is not unlawful and is constitutional, the data garnered from the registration exercise must be merged with the existing National Register of Registrants database, NRRDB. The Commission will move to ensure all arrangements for the publication of a credible preliminary list of electors, PLE, before commencement of an extensive claims and objections, C&O, exercise. On the other hand, the opposition People's Progressive Party, Civic, is urging GCOM to move decisively by immediately launching a claims and objectives exercise, which will allow those who are not on the National Register of Registrants and are eligible to be properly registered. The party is of the view that the decision made by GCOM on Tuesday is the only logical one that could have been made. However, for the PPP, the planned merger of data from the house-to-house registration will not improve the quality or credibility of the database. Rather, it will further contaminate the National Register of Registrants and cause further delays in the holding of elections.
Vincent and the Grenadines and Dominica were the only two CARICOM countries who voted against an OAS resolution on the human rights situation in Venezuela yesterday. The resolution, which was eventually approved by the OAS's Permanent Council, condemns the grave and systematic violations of human rights in Venezuela, including the use of torture, illegal and arbitrary detentions, extrajudicial executions, forced disappearances, and the denial of the most basic rights and necessities, especially those related to health, food, and education. It also demands an independent, exhaustive, and credible investigation that makes it possible to bring the perpetrators and masterminds of the human rights violations to justice, and an immediate and unhindered access for the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights to Venezuela. Barbados, Belize, St. Kitts and Nevis, Suriname, and Trinidad and Tobago abstained from the vote, and Antigua and Barbuda and Grenada were absent. Stay with us. Your Midday Sport is next. The Trinidad and Tobago Football Association has disbanded a task force that was set up to improve the sport in the country. In this TTT Sport report, football boss David John Williams says the task force failed to carry out the Federation's mandate to take the game forward.
Speaking at today's press conference, President of the TTFA, David John Williams, announced the suspension of the commission that had proposed this formation of a so-called T-League for professional football in Trinidad and Tobago.
There was a parameter that was set out for the commission to deal with, and the board today felt that the commission did not fulfill its full responsibility insofar as the task that it was set out to do, and the board voted unanimously to disband the commission.
He earlier reminded those gathered that the TT Pro League and the Super League are not members of the TTFA, only the clubs that play in those respective leagues. Before announcing the setting up of a new commission that is to report back to the TTFA with a plan to extend the Ascension League or have professional football back and running by the 4th of October or possibly before or even after the proposed date.
The board also voted unanimously to form a committee of 5, which comprised of Mr. Selby Brown, Ms. Julia Batiste, Mr. Anthony Moore, Ms. Susan Warwick, and Mr. Colin Partap.
And that's Caribbean in 10. Join us at 6:30 this evening for Caribbean Newsline. Good afternoon.